All right. So, what are we doing tonight? A few days ago, I was chatting with Forrest, KI7QCF, who also has a fantastic YouTube channel, which I will put a link to on the screen right now. And Forrest said, "Hey, do you have a video showing how to properly adjust a bug?" And I asked him, I said, "Not really. Were you looking for tips? Did you want to, maybe collaborate on a video together?" And he said that really he just wanted to see how I did it. And so I'm going to go ahead and make a video showing that. And also, Forrest, my challenge to you is using the methods that I've got here. I'd like to see you adjust one of your bugs and get it working really, really well and really, really well dialed in, and see if you're happier with the sound. So that's my challenge back to Forrest. I'm going to go through three bugs here. I'm not going to go in super in depth on any of them, except for the last one. So, not all bugs are the same, and there's different manufacturers. Even within the same manufacturer, they might use different processes, but they all basically have the same parts. So, if we look at this, we have We have spring tension that controls the amount of tension when you're pressing the dial lever. You have this spring, that's the spring tension that controls how much tension there is when you're pressing the dit lever. And then we have two stops. So you have they call it the DA side stop, but really it's stopping the pendulum arm, the rod, the bar, whatever you want to call that, against the damper. And then you have the what they call the dit side stop, which is, that's how far you can press the dit side before it starts vibrating. Beyond that, you have the positioning of the contacts, in-out adjustment on each contact, and sometimes you have an adjustable damper, sometimes you don't. So first thing I always like to do when I'm adjusting a bug is just loosen everything, all the way out or close to all the way out. Don't worry about losing your settings. We can easily come back to those. One thing I'm not going to cover. Bugs also have these trunnion adjustments. So there's a trunnion adjustment on the top for some bugs. Some of the later vibroplexes don't have that at all. They might just have a little red bead, and the top set, the top side of the trunnion is fixed. But all of them have a bottom side trunnion that can go up and down. If you need to move your main pendulum assembly up and down, sometimes that's the way to do it. On other bugs, this is not one of them, but on other bugs, there might be a little screw here that you can loosen that allows you to move it up and down the pivot rod without actually adjusting up and down the trunnion screws. So again, for this video, I'm not going to go in depth how to figure that out. But if you've got everything set up and your contacts really just aren't lining up, like they're nowhere near the height of the contacts on the contact posts, that may be something you need to do. If they're just a little bit off, well, the contact here is adjustable, so you can get a little bit of up down out of it, and the contact here is adjustable, so you can get a little bit of up down out of it. If they're really far off, you might need to look at actually adjusting the height of the main assembly. That doesn't happen to most bugs, but sometimes they've been abused or they're in pretty bad shape, and you'll need to take a look at it. So basically what we do is, first thing I adjust is the yes, I got my hands backwards here. The dit side spring tension. So that's this one right here. And I'm just gonna do that until it's got a little bit of tension on it. It really doesn't need much at all. We can adjust that later. I'm gonna just lock that down. What that also does is that spring is now pushing the pendulum against the damper. So from here, we can take what they call the DA side dot, the DA side stop, and let's just move this until this pendulum comes just off the damper. And now let's bring it back until it just barely touches the damper. I'm going to hold that there and lock it down. So the goal would be that when I let this go, it rests right on the damper, barely having any perceptible movement, no bounce at all. You don't want it to be setting hard against the damper. You really just want it to be just barely touching. So that's the right position for that. The next thing we do is we go ahead and bring the DIT side stop in, and I like to bring it in till it just barely touches. You don't need to crank it down, just let it just touch there. And then I'm going to back it off a quarter of a turn, and I'm going to see what does that feel like. And that's not quite enough movement, so I'm going to go another quarter turn. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to hold that, and I'm going to lock that one down. And then the next thing I do is I go ahead and bring in the dot contact. And this one you can do by feel. Some people want to have a pretty, a lot of motion there, and some people prefer to have, have it be pretty tight. I like it about like that. So I'm going to hold that there and lock it down. After I get everything else dialed in, and as I'm sending, sometimes I'm like, oh gee, I'm missing my timing, between the dits and das. Let me just, loosen the DA contact up a little bit or tighten it up a little bit, help me get my timing right. Again, that's a personal preference. Where do you like it? I like it about like that. Lastly is the DIT contact. So what I normally do is I'll let this bounce, and I'll turn it in until I can visually see where they're basically kissing there. And I'm going to lock that down. To get that dialed in, we actually have to hook this up and go ahead and look at how it sounds. And we'll go ahead and do that at the end of this video. Okay, the next bug we're going to look at. This is something likely most bug enthusiasts have not seen before. This is a custom-made bug with a magnetic reed switch instead of an actual physical DIT contact. So when the pendulum rod comes close to the magnetic reed switch, it uses a magnet to actuate the switch. The reason I'm showing you this is I wanted to show you that they have the same basic adjustments. We have the DA spring tension. We have the DA side stop, the DIT side stop. In this case, the damper is a screw, and this is an adjustable damper. So if you are going through your settings and you notice that the pendulum rod is not going parallel to the long edge of the bug, if it's set this way or set that way, you may need to actually move the damper to get the pendulum straight. One thing I will show you is not every bug is the exact same. On this one, instead of a DIT side spring, it's actually using a magnet. So it's got a magnet and a steel screw there to create the what would normally be spring tension on the DIT side. So if you move that steel screw away, it's a little less tension. If you make it closer, it's a little more tension. But otherwise, it works the same as any other bug. There's lots of other bugs out there that use different systems, but if your bug is not a Vibraplex, or it's not a McElroy, or it's not something that uses really the same standard set of parts, just look closely at it and figure out what's controlling my tension on the DA side, what's controlling my tension on the DIT side. Those are going to be your adjustments. There should also be a stop for each side. The contacts, contact and the reed contact, the position of those is adjustable. All the same concepts are going to apply. Speaking of McElroy bugs, let's go ahead and look at a Mac key. Again, I want to show you that all of the same pieces apply here. So, you've got your DA contact, your DIT contact. the other side of the DIT contact is a spring. You've got a damper that's not adjustable. And then we've got our DAW side stop, our DIT side stop, our DAW side tension, and up under here is the DIT side tension. So all the adjustments are going to be the same. The procedure to adjust this bug is going to be just the exact same as all of your standard off-the-shelf bugs that you're going to see. So the last bug that I'm going to put on the table here, this is going to be the one that we'll actually go through and do the fine-tuning with. This is my daily driver, despite the fact that it has been boxed up for a little while and it's got just a touch of dust on it. I'm sure it's still going to do a great job for us. First things first, let me go ahead and get this wired up, because we won't be able to do the audio without wiring it up. So we'll put the black into the base, and we'll put the red into the contact side. All right. I'm going to walk you through the exact same procedure that I did with that Champion at first, just to kind of reinforce the concepts and just to make sure that this bug is doing all the things that I said it would do. So first things first, let's just loosen everything up. I don't know if I talked about the adjustable dampers. I showed you the adjustable damper on that magnetic reed switch bug. Vibraplex bugs, a couple of those have adjustable dampers as well, like the T damper. It's very similar to the I damper that we saw a few minutes ago on the Champion. There's an I damper. I don't actually have a T damper handy to show you, but it's like an I damper, but there's a little bar that the damper wheel rests on that moves in and out. And also some of the oldest Vibraplexes, like the 1905s and some of the 1906s, they have a screw that runs through the bottom of the L damper and actually allows the damper to move in and out. So if you have an adjustable damper and your pendulum rod isn't running parallel to the long edge of the bug, that may be something you need to adjust to get that in parallel. Or maybe your bug's like super old and has been abused and it's not going to work right if it's parallel. So every bug is unique. You'll have to play with that to see how yours likes to run. All right, so everything is all the way out here. So first thing I'm going to do is set the DIT side tension, and I'm just going to turn this in until I can kind of feel a little tension here. That feels pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and just lock that down. We can always add a little more tension later. Next thing is we're going to turn in the DAW side stop. So now that DIT tension spring is adjusting, it's pushing the pendulum over towards the damper. So we want to turn this in until it just barely comes off the damper. There it goes. And now I'm going to back it out until it's just barely resting on the damper. I'm going to lock that down. Cool. And that actually might be too much. You see how much it's hitting the damper when it comes back? Let me actually just turn that in just a little more. One more try. Cool. So now it comes back and it just barely touches the damper. Next thing is the DIT side stop. So I like to turn these in until they're just touching. You don't need to wrench it down. Just stop as soon as it touches. And now let's back that off a quarter of a turn. And you can see that's barely vibrating. So let's back that out another quarter of a turn. That looks pretty good. So that's a good starting point. We're definitely going to need to adjust that when we do the fine tuning. Next thing to go ahead and adjust is going to be your DAW contact gap. So let's go ahead and turn this in. And this is, again, a matter of personal preference. How much gap do you like to have? And for me, it's about that much. And then I always like to eyeball this and then do the fine tuning. So I'm going to let it vibrate, and I'm going to move this in until it looks like they're just kissing, which is about right there. I'm going to lock that down, and we'll do some fine tuning. Okay, so next thing, let me go ahead and bring the key over, and I've already got the rig hooked to the computer. So let me go ahead and go start a screen recording for us, and we will take a look at exactly how this looks. All right, I finally got the audio worked out on the computer, got the rig, the computer, and my microphone all at the right levels so that you can hear me. This is Precision CW Fistcheck software, and it is copyright Ernst F. Schroeder. I hope I'm not messing that up. DJ7HS. It's pretty cool software. Let me show you what happens here. So I can hit a key on my keyboard, like we've got an F up here, but let me give us an L. So the program will play that at the speed that we have set in, and we've got the target speed set up here at 15 words a minute. So we can, we can just hit L, and then on the key, I can actually key that in, and it'll tell us what we did. I'm a little off there. It's hard to get perfect because the computer's perfect every time, and with a manual key, you're almost never perfect. Oops. So that's a demonstration of what this really does. Let's check out how this program's actually set up. So in the parameters, and this is actually, if you notice all those red blocks, that's because it's actually picking up my microphone. Let me change that. It's supposed to be on my line in because I've got my rig's audio out connected to the computer's line in. And for the Morse input device, it will allow the keyboard and mouse a sound input or COM import. So I'm using sound import. So it's actually coming from my rig. So I'm using the rig as an oscillator. The output from the rig goes to the line in on the computer, and then the Fistcheck software can hear that. Also important to note that my rig is set to have a CW tone of 700 hertz. Some people prefer 600, some 800. Some rigs are not adjustable. You may need to change this number to match your rig's output. Let me show you. I think the default on this program is 800. So if I set this to 800 and then I send something, you see how it just gets all wonky. It's not recording what's actually happening. And that's just because it's not listening for the right frequency. So if we set the tone back to 700, which is what my rig's outputting, we can actually hear that again. Another thing that's important is I don't have split audio coming out of my rig, so the only audio out of the rig is going into the computer. So on my input device configuration, I am using the line in, and on the listen tab here, I've got that set up to listen to this device. So I'm actually hearing the sound coming out of the computer speakers, not the rig. And that's how I've got all this set up to be able to play with the Fistcheck software. So what's important about Fistcheck software? Well, when we're using straight keys, cooties, or bugs, you don't have a electronic keyer doing the work for you to get your timing perfect. So you need to practice timing. So with Fistcheck software, we can actually practice letter after letter, or phrases, or just let it do some decode and see if you're this software is not very forgiving, so it'll tell you if it doesn't like what's coming out. And how we're actually going to use this for this video is if I have all different dit lengths or really bad dit spacing, like let me see if I can do some dit spacing where there's barely any space between them. See how the dits are very wide and the spaces between them are very small. So you can actually see not only when you're keying but also the space between them. So the idea is we're going to be adjusting some bugs in this video, and we want to be able to see if the dits are too heavy, too weak, if the spacing between them is too heavy or too weak. And this is a really good visualizer to help get a bug adjusted. You can also do this on an oscilloscope or even with the Morse Expert software, which I believe is available for both Android and iPhone in the appropriate app stores. Um, I like the Fistcheck software. If I really want to get something dialed in, I feel like Precision CW Fistcheck is definitely the most accurate visualization you can get, and it stays still on the screen. I like some of the other software that's out there, but things tend to just scroll right off the screen before you can really study what's coming out of it. So that's an explanation of the Fistcheck software. Um, Now I'm going to jump into actually adjusting a bug, and after we'll come back to this after I've made some adjustments and actually show what is happening and make some fine tuning on the bug and match these videos up and hopefully be able to show you how to really get your bug dialed in and sounding pretty good. Okay, so now we've got our bug dialed in. We've got our our Fistcheck software going on the screen. First things first, let me move this weight all the way out. It's always easiest. You can get the most accurate readings when you're going at the slowest speed the bug will go. We'll probably even slip pendulum extension on the end of this just to bring that down a little lower and get an even more accurate reading. Another thing I forgot to mention is this particular bug. If you see the two little screws right on top of the mainspring, this bug has what Vibraplex called the Lahif patent adjustable mainspring. So this mainspring actually moves in and out, which can further change the characteristics of your dits. If you have a bug like that, which there weren't a whole lot of them. They made those on the presentation models in the 50s and I think into the early 60s. If you do have an adjustable mainspring on your bug and you don't know where to adjust it and you've never used your bug before, you'll probably want to adjust that mainspring so it's just barely going to the second screw. Um, if you have used your bug and you have an adjustable mainspring and you're generally happy with the speeds that it goes, leave it alone. If it's going way, way too fast for you and it looks like you can move that mainspring out a little bit, go ahead and move it out a little bit. But otherwise, leave it. All right. So, first things first, now I've moved that weight out. Let's look at what the computer says we're doing as far as the actual speed that this is going at. I'm just going to send some fives. Okay, so the natural speed with the weight all the way out on this, it says right here actual speed 16.6. So I'm going to dial this into 16.6. And now I'm going to tell the computer to send us a 5. Okay, let's just keep adjusting that until we can meet in the middle. All right, that's pretty much right on. You can see how not all of the dits are the same width. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some adjustments to the bug. I'm going to move the dit contact in and out until we're getting something a little more consistent. You can see that towards the middle of this 5, I'm getting a pretty thin dit and a pretty wide gap. So let me see if I can even that out some. Okay, I may have overdone it just a little bit. You can see how the the dits are now a little bit fatter than the spaces. This would be perfectly acceptable, but if you're trying to get it perfect, let's just back that out just maybe like an eighth of a turn and see what it looks like. I think that looks pretty good. Let's again, further kind of match these up. I think we're going to find this to be right around 18. Had an extra dit in that last one. So yeah, so this is the really cool thing about this Fistcheck software. So if you look at the overall width of the character, the green boxes being what the computer generates, you can see that from start to finish, we're really lining up quite nicely. And especially when it comes to bugs, you're rarely going to get them perfect. But you can see that we've got this really close. It's so close that I don't even think I would want to try and get it any better than this. If anything, I'm going to go either too fat or too thin on the dits themselves. This is about as good as it gets. You can see I'm almost perfect on the first dit, almost perfect on the second dit, almost perfect on the third dit. The fourth one just fires just a hair early. The fifth one fires just a hair earlier than that, and it's a little bit wide on the end. But overall, this is going to sound really good to the ear. It's really close to the computer generated. So now let's work on just a couple of characters. Let's hear an F. Man, it's you think you send good code until the computer shows you just how far off you really are. Let's switch that and do an L. I know on bugs, I tend to send my DAWs just a little longer than I really should. I really should spend some more time practicing with Fistcheck software and start, cutting those just a little shorter. Let's hear it again. Let's do a C. Okay, I'm getting pretty close to the computer on that. And then let's do a stroke. That's one of my favorite characters to do to see how I'm sounding. All right, again, getting pretty close to the computer, so you can see how powerful it is to use Fistcheck software to get your bug dialed in. So the method I use by backing that dit contact off, right here, backing the dit contact off, and then adjusting it by eye until it's just kissing, that gets you really, really close. If you're not using that method, you might have to really work this in and out to get that dialed in. A couple other things that you really might should look for is, one, a lot of times one of the things that happens, one of the most common things is scratchy dits. And there's a couple of things that cause that. First of all, clean your contacts. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that the first thing I do when I take a bug out of the box is I almost certainly clean the contacts because you're not going to get good sound with dirty contacts. A lot of times you can just wipe them with a dollar bill. Sometimes they need just a little more TLC than that, especially if they've been sitting around for a long time or if they've got a little corrosion on them. Second thing is, depending on the bounciness of this dit spring, depending on the bounciness of this dit contact spring, um, what might happen is you might actually have the contacts kind of rubbing against each other when they touch, and that makes them sound scratchy. So two things you can do. One, if you look at how I've got the contacts here, they're almost perfectly lined up. You know, they're not off, they're not off. They're really pretty pretty perfectly lined up. The second thing you can do is, if you really need to, you can take a piece of foam or a piece of sponge, and you can actually put a piece of sponge inside inside of that, and it'll actually act as a spring damper. Now, with that sponge in there, we'll have to adjust this all over again. But if you're getting scratchiness and your contacts are clean and your contacts are well aligned, definitely, before you do anything drastic, try getting just a little piece of foam. You don't need a lot, and just put it in there. You may have even noticed earlier when I had this McElroy out, it's got a little piece of foam in there. This McElroy, I don't know why, but it just has a little bit of a scratchy dit to it. So that foam is basically, as far as I'm concerned, a permanent piece of this bug, and it makes it sound really good on the air. So that overall is how to adjust a bug. Last time for the overview, loosen everything up. First, give yourself a little bit of dit side tension, and then adjust this stop in so that it's just barely resting on the damper, and then adjust this stop in so that it's just got a little bit of vibration to it. We found about half a turn out from just touching was great. And then go ahead and adjust the DA side gap. And you didn't see me adjust it on this last one, is actually because I liked the way it felt. But if the DA side gap doesn't have enough tension, you can move this wheel in to give it a little more DA side tension. And then lastly, adjust the dit contact. And you need to really do that either by ear or with Fistcheck software if you really want to get it perfect. So that's my overview of how to adjust a bug. Hope that's really helpful to some folks. And until next time,